There is a particular kind of evil that wears a pressed abaya and smells of expensive perfume. The kind that sits in the front row at church, drops the largest offering, and shakes the pastor's hand with both of his. The kind that the whole town calls a good man, because the whole town has only ever seen one side of him. Emeka Okonkwo was that kind of evil, and for 11 years, only one person in Oguta knew it: his wife. Before we go 1 second further, if you have ever watched someone be destroyed slowly by a person everybody else called wonderful, this story is for you. Do not move, because what Emeka did to this woman will make your blood boil, and what she did about it will make you stand up and clap. Her name was Adahazy, Ada, to the people who loved her, and there had been many of those once, back when she was the brightest student Oguta Grammar School had produced in a decade, back when her father called her his professor daughter and saved up to send her to university in a B estate. She had been 24 when she met Emeka. He was 31, already established, already impressive. A building contractor from Onitsha who had come to Oguta for a project and stayed, he said, because he could not leave without her. He had courted her the old-fashioned way, came to her father's house with wine and a full delegation, sat with the elders, paid her bride price without negotiating, which her father said was the mark of a man who understood a woman's worth. They married in December, beneath a tent of orange and gold. Ada was so happy she could not sleep the night before the wedding. She lay in the dark of her father's house, listening to the generator hum, thinking about the life stretching ahead of her: children, a home, a partner, a future built with her own hands alongside a man who had chosen her completely. She did not know, lying there in the dark, that she had already made the last free choice of her life. The first time Emeka hit her, and they had been married for 7 months. He apologized so thoroughly afterward. Tears, prostration, a gold necklace from Onitsha market, 3 days of the man she thought she had married, that Ada told herself it was an incident, an aberration, a bad night that would never repeat itself. But it repeated itself. By the 3rd year, Ada had learned the map of Emeka's moods the way sailors learn weather, reading the pressure in the air before the storm arrived, adjusting her behavior, her tone, her posture, trying to navigate around the parts of him that were dangerous. She learned which topics detonated him. She learned never to laugh too loudly when his business was slow. She learned to have his food ready at the exact temperature he preferred, because a lukewarm meal was not just a lukewarm meal, it was a reason. He always had a reason. And in public, he was still magnificent, still the front-row churchman, still the contractor who employed 12 men from the village, still the husband who called Ada my queen at gatherings while resting a proprietary hand on the small of her back, a hand that felt like a warning even when it looked like affection. The neighbors saw a man who provided. They did not see the woman who calculated, every single morning, whether today would be a safe day. She learned his moods like weather patterns. She learned to make herself small enough to survive him. Drop a like in the comments if you know someone who has lived inside this kind of silence. And keep watching, because Ada is about to find something that changes absolutely everything. It was in the 11th year that Ada found the document. She had gone into Emeka's home office, a room she had been quietly discouraged from entering for years, always under the reasonable-sounding excuse that his business papers were confidential, only because the ceiling had begun to leak and she needed to place a bucket before the floor warped. She found the bucket, and then, wedged between 2 thick files on the bottom shelf, she found a brown envelope. Inside it was a marriage certificate, not theirs. This one was dated 4 years before Emeka had ever set foot in Oguta. The bride's name was Chioma Okonkwo, née Dikai. The groom's name was Emeka Okonkwo. The witnesses were two names Ada did not recognize. The stamp was from a registry office in Onitsha. Ada sat on the floor of that leaking office for a very long time. When she finally stood up, she was not the same woman who had sat down. She put the envelope back exactly where she found it. She placed the bucket under the leak. She went to the kitchen, finished cooking his dinner, set the table the way he liked it. And when he came home that evening, she smiled at him across the pot of bitter leaf soup and fufu and asked about his day. But her mind was already moving. Ada had spent 11 years learning how to survive Emeka. Now she was going to use everything she knew, a marriage certificate, 4 years before he came to Oguta, which means Ada was never his wife. She was his secret, and she had been living inside that secret for 11 years. Plea, do not go anywhere, because what Ada does next is the reason I called this story Angry But Satisfied. She started quietly. That was the thing about women who had been underestimated for a long time. They understood the power of being underestimated. They knew how to move without being seen. She called her younger sister, Ngozi, in Lagos without telling Emeka. Ngozi, who had married a lawyer. Ngozi, who Ada had quietly helped with school fees years ago from the small trading money she hid in her bra, because Emeka monitored every naira in their joint account. Ngozi, who had been trying to get Ada out of that house for years and had been told, repeatedly, that everything was fine. Everything, Ada told her sister now, was not fine. She began photographing documents quietly. The marriage certificate, bank statements she found in the same shelf, a land title for a property in Asaba she had never heard of, registered solely in Emeka's name, purchased the same year he had told her they could not afford to repair the roof. She made calls, she kept notes, she moved like water, finding every crack, filling every space, going everywhere without appearing to go anywhere. And she waited. The moment she had been waiting for came, as moments often do, disguised as something else entirely. Emeka announced on a Tuesday evening that he was traveling to Port Harcourt for a 2-week contract. He kissed Ada on the forehead in the practiced way of a man performing a role he had long since stopped feeling. He got into his Hilux. He drove away. He was not going to Port Harcourt. Ada had already known that. She had seen the hotel booking confirmation on his phone 3 weeks earlier, a boutique hotel in Onitsha. She had seen the name of the person he was meeting. She had found that person's Instagram page, had scrolled through it quietly, had looked at the photographs of a beautiful young woman who posted about her God-sent husband and tagged her location as Onitsha every single weekend. Emeka had a third life, a wife in Onitsha, a girlfriend who thought she was the wife, and Ada in Oguta, who had been none of these things legally for 11 years. She let him leave. Then, she picked up her phone and called Ngozi's husband, and she built her case like an architect. Subscribe to K-Scripted if you want more women like Ada on your timeline, because we are almost at the end. And I promise you, every single thing Emeka planted is about to come up. What happened next took 6 weeks. Ngozi's husband filed the papers that exposed the first marriage in Onitsha, which made Ada's marriage not just troubled but legally void. Bigamy in Nigeria is a criminal offense carrying up to 7 years imprisonment. The lawyer filed a report. The police, to everyone's surprise, moved. The land in Asaba, purchased, the investigation revealed, with money diverted from a federal government contract Emeka had executed in Anambra State, attracted a different kind of attention. The kind with offices in Abuja. The girlfriend in Onitsha, upon learning about Ada and the first wife Chioma, did not weep quietly. She was a woman with a large Instagram following and an even larger sense of outrage. She posted everything: the hotel receipts, the messages, the photograph of Emeka's 3 wedding rings arranged side by side on a table like artifacts from an excavation. By the time Emeka returned from Onitsha, 4 days earlier than planned, because his world had begun collapsing too fast to manage from a distance, there was a police vehicle parked outside his compound gate. His church had already quietly removed him from the board of trustees. His 12 employees had not been paid in 3 months, something Ada had also documented carefully, which added a labor complaint to the growing architecture of Emeka's undoing. He walked through his own gate and found not the quiet, managed woman he had spent 11 years perfecting, but Ada, standing in the compound in the full afternoon sun, her sister beside her, a lawyer beside her sister, and behind them all, Emeka's first wife, Chioma, who had driven 4 hours from Onitsha because she too had been waiting 11 years to stand somewhere and be seen. Emeka looked at the 4 women. He looked at the police vehicle. He looked at Ada. And Ada, who had learned his moods like weather, who had made herself small enough to survive him, who had smiled at him across a pot of bitter leaf soup and fufu the night she found the document that ended everything, looked back at him with an expression he had never once seen on her face in 11 years of marriage. She looked free. The court case lasted 8 months. Emeka was convicted of bigamy. The Asaba property was seized. The contract fraud added 18 months to his sentence. His Hilux was auctioned. The church gave his front row seat to a deacon who had been quietly waiting for it for years. Chioma, the first wife, returned to Onitsha and opened a tailoring business. She sent Ada a bolt of Ankara fabric 6 months later with a card that said simply, "We survived him. That makes us family." The girlfriend deleted her Instagram. Nobody blamed her. And Ada? Ada took the small trading money she had hidden in her old bra for 11 years, a habit that had saved her more times than Emeka would ever know, and added it to the compensation the court awarded her. She went back to school. At 41 years old, in a lecture hall in Uturu, surrounded by students half her age, Ada sat in the front row for the first time in her life. Not because anyone placed her there, not because she was performing a role for an audience, but because she had decided that she was done sitting in the back of anything. Her father, old now, half-blind, sat in the courtyard of his Oguta home the evening she called to tell him. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, very softly, "My professor daughter, I always knew you would find your way back." Ada pressed the phone against her ear and let herself cry. Not the quiet, careful crying of a woman managing her grief in a house that was not safe, but the full, loud, ugly, grateful crying of a woman who had finally, after 11 years, come home to herself. Ada went back to school at 41. Front row. Because she was done sitting in the back of anything. If this story made you angry at Emeka, good. If it made you proud of Ada, even better. Share this video because somewhere, someone needs to watch a woman get everything back that was taken from her. Comment below. What was your moment? Was it the document in the office? Was it the 4 women at the gate? Was it Ada's father on the phone? Like this video, subscribe to K Scripted, hit that notification bell and tell me in the comments what story you want next. I'm K. And remember, the woman he tried to bury quietly, she came back loud.